Hey guys, welcome back to Jay Smith Down the Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Gay, here today with Andy Bunker, host of uh, the Andy and Randy Show on 929 The Game, Atlanta Sports Radio. Andy, I appreciate you coming on today, talking some ball with us. We're pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Glad we could make this work.
Oh yeah, definitely. So Andy, looking back on 2021, this past season, what would you say are some teams that surprised you and didn't surprise you, and that they stay at the same pace that you probably expected to, looking back this past year?
I would have to say I was most surprised by the Bengals. Didn't really know what to expect. And Burrow was coming off an injury, and they make that run all the way to the Super Bowl. What a treat that was to watch from an offensive standpoint. What Burrow and Chase and all those guys are able to do, that was a lot of fun. I think the Falcons surprised a little bit, honestly. I mean, they won 7 games. I didn't think they were going to be able to win 7 games. I know that, some of the games were maybe against the lower tier teams in the NFL, but you know what? You got to win those games, and they did. And they won a lot of close games as well. So I thought that was pretty good. Hopefully that's something that they can build on this year. I mean, as far as teams that kind of met expectations or didn't surprise. They were right where you thought they would be. I think the Chiefs got off to that slow start, right? Everybody
Yeah,
wanted to bail on them, and they can't. They're not this, they're not that, and then all of a sudden they win 11 in a row, and they're right back in the playoffs, and they are in the AFC Championship game. And I think people kind of want to write them off again this year too, because Tyreek Hill's gone and he's in Miami talking all that trash. And I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be just fine. They got Patrick Mahomes. They got a bunch of other good players on that team. So, but I don't think anybody was as surprising as the Bengals. Just what a fun story. Hopefully they can build on it. You know what I mean? Just from a wanting a long suffering fan base to have something to be excited about. Like Cincinnati's been a rough go for a while now. So hopefully they can stay there.
yeah, yeah. And I would say for me, the Falcons, of course, definitely surprised. Yeah, they sort of did. I mean, based off of 2020, and like you said, they won the games that they should have won, which I didn't see happening under the old regime, right?
Right.
So that was a big key turning point that was kind of, mentioned throughout last season for them, was that they were winning the games that, they were supposed to win versus under Dan Quinn and Dimitrov, they probably would not have won those games like that, So, and then, like I said, the Bengals, of course, yes, never in my life would have thought the Bengals would have made the Super Bowl last year, and they almost won it too. They're pretty close, but the Rams, right?
Yeah, that
So,
was. I guess you could chalk them as. I guess surprise probably isn't right, but now we've seen 2 years in a row where teams go out and get franchise quarterbacks. Brady comes there in the way that he came to Tampa, and then they make that big trade to get Stafford in LA, and it works. So this old model of you got to draft a franchise guy and pay him and keep him and all that stuff. Well, there's kind of a new way of doing it in today's NFL, and we saw so much quarterback movement this offseason again, with franchise guys, big name player, Matt Ryan
yep.
going to a new city. It's kind of a third way to build a team now that we haven't seen a lot before, but it's worked 2 years in a row.
Yeah, it has. Also, Russell Wilson moving from the Seattle
Yeah.
Seahawks to the Denver Broncos, right? So, like you said, we're moving into that trend of going out and getting these franchise quarterbacks, versus just drafting a guy like you said and just maturing him, and which is still what a lot of teams are doing. But for the most part, that trend of going to get your star franchise quarterback, because in today's league, you got to have a good quarterback to win. You need one. It's essential. So, but looking back on the Falcons past season, would you say that last year were they in a good spot going to 2022? Did they do you see improvement overall from the team on both sides of the ball, or did it stay the same? And then what are your expectations for the team heading into 2022 under a completely new regime?
Yeah. I mean, I think the main takeaway that I have from this regime of Arthur Smith, Terry Fontenot, this coaching staff is they're a really organized group. They won those close games, like you said. I mean, they are, I think, maybe a little bit more focused on the details than the previous regime was. And I think that showed up in those moments where the game could have gone either way. And under Dan Quinn, you probably saw a lot of those games slip away that they should have won, that they lost. They won every game they were in and that they should have won last year. They lost games to teams that were significantly better than them. It's hard to take a ton from position group and players and certain guys from year to year because the whole team's different, it feels like. Of the 70 guys that played a game for the Falcons last year, I think only 33 of them are back this year. So half the team is brand new. Most obviously the quarterback. I mean, you had Matt Ryan for 14 years. It's hard to know really what this team is going to be with Marcus Mariota or Desmond Ridder, depending on which one of those guys is starting. And the one position group that changed the least, the offensive line, is the one that probably needed to change the most. So it's hard to say really what this team is going to be. I know a lot of people want to predict, 4, 5, 6 loss or 4, 5, 6 wins, whatever. Maybe it's just a matter of guys that are unproven getting opportunities, and if they can step up and prove it, like Richie Grant, if he can be a starter and be an impact player at safety, if Kyle Pitts can take that jump, if Drake London can be ready from Jump Street, if Tyler Algier can be a running back that you can really count on, there's so much necessity that young players are going to have to really step up and be a factor for this team. It's hard to know. I mean, I guess you can say it's hard to expect a lot from young players, and maybe that's why people lean towards the Falcons might not be very good this year. But who knows? Maybe some of those guys pop, and they're a little bit ahead of schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of the Bengals again, they were pretty young.
Right,
young
absolutely.
Team. But it's that energy and that they brought because they're young and just the mindset that they want to go win, and they were able to win these games and of course go all the way to the Super Bowl. And from what I'm hearing from camp, for the Falcons, that the mindset over there is that we're going to we're going to be a contending team. Olamide Zaccheaus, he mentioned the other day, he said, I think we're a playoff team. I think we're a contending team. Kyle Pitts said the same thing. So obviously these guys believe that that their team is going to be able to win some ball games, and it's just overall feels like a different vibe. The morale is different.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's just so different is the word. I mean, it's just so different. Matt Ryan's going to start for the Colts this year. Julio Jones plays for the Bucs now. Calvin Ridley's not here. I mean, Grady Jarrett's still over there. We know that, so that's good. I mean, Deion Jones on the PUP list. We don't know what his role is going to be. Like, the guys that were the pillars of this franchise 3 years ago, most of them aren't here anymore. So Arthur Smith really and Terry Fontenot have put their fingerprints all over this franchise so far. Next year is going to be a big change too. I mean, that's the thing. Right now it's about identifying young guys that you can win with. And then next offseason is going to be about paying those guys and bringing in other guys free agent wise, because you're going to have a whole bunch of money, and try to win with them. But we're right smack dab in the middle of a massive change for this franchise. And, growing pains can be tough. Rebuilds, thing about rebuilds, everybody always wants them, but they take time and they suck while they're going on. Like, everybody now thinks about the Hawks and they're like, yeah, the rebuild worked. It did. But those random February nights in 2017 when we had to watch Kent Bazemore and Torian Prince start, that sucked. And it felt like it lasted forever. The Hawks are kind of in that rebuild part. Hopefully it ends up being successful, but right now we just kind of got to suck it up and see what happens.
Yeah. We're in that loading phase, heading into just loading up the players that we're needing for this franchise to be a winning franchise. And I honestly believe, man, I don't think we're that far away, to be truthful. Just looking at the squad, I mean, obviously very talented. It's just a matter of putting those things together, especially on both sides of the ball. And as you mentioned, the offensive line, that's a huge thing. The pass protection is quite awful last year. So what do you think as far as on offensively and defensively for the Falcons? What needs to change in order to have better results on both sides of the ball?
Well, I mean, defensively, they have to get to the quarterback. They were the worst team in the NFL by far. I think they had 18 sacks last year. The next worst team had 27. There were individuals in the NFL that had more than 18 sacks last year. Falcons as a team only had 18, and like 3/4 of those sacks aren't on the team anymore. So hopefully Arnold Ebiketie and Lorenzo Carter and D'Angelo Malone and whoever else that is going to be in charge of getting the quarterback on the ground can do it, because I mean, that's something we've been talking about with the Falcons pretty much for a decade. Like there was the year where Vic Beasley was excellent and they got to the quarterback. But other than that, every year it's like, damn, who's going to do this? Is Tack McKinley going to finally step up? No, he's not. Is Vic Beasley going to be able to recapture? No, he's not going to be able to do that. All right, they got Dante Fowler. That was a disaster. The ability to get the quarterback on the ground has been an issue that this team has struggled with for years. Hopefully they can get it right. I don't know. Again, all these guys are rookies or, unproven players that we have no idea really what to expect from other than hope. We hope that they're good, but we don't know. The opposite is true on the offensive line. They got to keep the quarterback up. Now, maybe having a more mobile guy back there, whether it's Ritter or Mariota, will help a little bit, a little wrinkle to keep the pass rush of the opposition a little bit more honest, but you got to be able to block your guy, at the end of the day. Like you can move the quarterback around and trickery and all that kind of stuff. That's great. But you got to have 5 guys on your offensive line that can consistently block for the passer, that can consistently create a pocket for him to throw in. And I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, Arthur Smith said yesterday, 3 of the 5 jobs are up for grabs. So he doesn't know either.
Yeah.
Those are the keys. I mean, it's true for every team in the NFL. You got to be able to get to the quarterback. You got to be able to protect your quarterback. And the Falcons didn't do that at all last year.
Nope, neither one. And like you said, the offensive line, you got to have, you think about the last time we had a decent pass protection group was 16, really.
Same year. Yeah, same year. They had all 5 guys played all 16 games. It's a huge advantage to have that.
Yeah, and ever since then, it's just been declining from there. So hopefully the offensive line can rebrand and rebuild and, get to be able to be back to one of the best pass protecting groups in the league, which I believe in, because Chris Lindstrom's great. I love Chris Lindstrom. Jake Matthews is still pretty solid. Hopefully Caleb McGarry can try improve. But yeah, overall, I think, like you said, pass rush and protecting the passer are keys. So how, switching on from the NFL to college, how big of an impact do you think NIL has had on collegiate athletes in schools, now, whether it be football or any sport, because this has been a big thing the last couple of years. And so just talk about what's your thoughts on that?
So, I think it's definitely had a big impact on individuals for sure. Guys are now legally able to make money, Now, a lot of these guys were making money before. Let's be clear about that. These boosters that own these businesses that are now giving out these NIL deals were just putting money in duffel bags and giving it to them before. So guys have been making money, but now they're able to make it above board and they don't have to feel weird about it or whatever. And they can also get out there and build their brand a little bit. If you're in a commercial, or last year you had Jordan Davis on the billboards, and you got Stetson Bennett able to kind of be out there forefront for some of these businesses. It's great. College football is the second biggest sport in this country, right after the NFL. So the idea that these guys aren't able to cash in on being that valuable is crazy. I don't think it's had that much of an impact on the landscape, though. The same team's got the best recruits still. I know Texas A&M was number 1. Okay, but they've had good recruiting classes before. Alabama and Georgia were still 2 and 3. Yeah. I think Alabama still has the best recruiting class in 2023 for next year. The shift of power that some people forecasted, I don't know we've really seen evidence of that yet. We also have never really seen evidence of a shift in power in college football. The same teams that were in the top 5 in 1965 are pretty much the same teams that are in the top 5 right now. These blue blood programs or whatever, these traditional powers, save for, an Oregon pops up here, and Clemson's certainly better than they have been. They're one of those teams now, and USC is down, but maybe they're back. Kind of ebbs and flows, but it kind of tends to be the same 10 to 15 programs that take turns being the best. And I haven't seen that change yet. And I don't know that we will. I mean, I don't know why those programs wouldn't also be the programs that have the ability to give out the most NIL deals. So the thing that's shifted, if anything is the transfer portal. You've seen guys and maybe NIL deals at other schools has shifted that a little bit with the transfer portal. But I mean, we've seen like South Carolina this year has the guy that was supposed to be the number one pick in the draft because it didn't work out at Oklahoma and he left. So now they have him at quarterback. If he's anywhere near what he was supposed to be, that's a transfer portal win. Like they would have never had Spencer Rattler before, but now they got him. And if he's good, that's huge for that program. That might be a little bit more of a leveler of the playing field to me than NIL. Because I think every big program has donors and boosters that own businesses that can give these guys money.
Yeah.
I think the freedom to move around a little bit more, and they just passed that new, even kind of wilder rule that it's not just a one-time free transfer. You can transfer whenever you want, as many times as you want without sitting out a year. So it's fully the wild, wild west. That probably has been a bigger chaos creator to me than the NIL has so far.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I also think it's just pretty crazy. Like these guys are getting, like, you see these players with, get these cars and all this money. I mean, hey, but these schools are, able to get these guys in, like you say, the transfer portal is basically free agency. I mean, you can go, you look at,
it's crazier than free agency.
Crazier. Like
you can leave whenever you want. You don't have to sign a contract. You can leave in the middle of the season. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, and you look at Jermaine Burton, who he's I feel like one of the more underrated players in college football. Very good receiver. He transfers over to Alabama. What's another guy? Jameson Williams from Ohio State. He goes over, right? So it's just it's like you said, the playing field is being leveled by the transfer portal. All these other schools are getting these good players now. They're coming over either because they weren't maybe playing that much at their own schools, or they just want to I just want to ring, I want to win, or something like that, right? So yeah, can't blame them. Can't. Definitely
until they regulate it. I mean, they're playing within the rules. I mean, I wish, from a traditional standpoint, I wish guys would stick around. It's fun to get to know guys for 3 and 4 years. That's the thing that we miss in college basketball now with the one and done. You just don't know the players. It's a new squad every year. I worry that might create a little bit of a disconnect between fans and the teams, just because every year there's 15, 20 new starters. Yeah. And it's hard to really get to know your team as well. Like we were at SEC Media Days last week, and half the teams in the SEC have new quarterbacks that played for other teams in the SEC last year. So it's like, oh yeah, that guy was the LSU quarterback. Now he's a Texas A&M quarterback. Oh yeah, that guy's the quarterback at Auburn now, but before that he was, you know what I mean? So it's just like all these guys moving around. At the end of the day, the goal is to make it to the NFL for all these players. And that's really hard to do. So as long as making it to the NFL is as hard as it is, the product on the field in college football is probably going to remain really good. And as long as Saturday is still really good, then I think college football will be okay.
Yeah, you said it, man, right there. So moving on, man, from that point, now we're going to shift back into the league a little bit here. So we're looking into 2022, obviously. It's going to be a different year, a lot of player movement in the NFL, guys moving around. So I'm going to ask you this, man. I know it's kind of early, but who is your Super Bowl pick this year? Your really early pick for the Super Bowl?
I got the Bills coming out of the AFC, Buffalo, and they're going to play. Who's Buffalo going to play in the Super Bowl? I think they might play Tampa.
Okay.
I think the Bills and the Bucks are going to be in the Super Bowl this year. I don't know, man. I think Tom Brady gives it another ride. I don't know. I'm doubting Tom Brady's ability to get to the Super Bowl as never a good idea. And I think the Bills were just so close last year. They're so good. I mean, they lost a couple guys, but they also added some players on defense. So I think Buffalo's going to have a really good year this year.
Yeah, I definitely would not count the Bills out because like they went toe to toe with Kansas City last year in the playoffs. I believe, they might be the second best team in the AFC right now behind the Chiefs. You know, and so yeah, and as far as the NFC is concerned, you can say I want to say the Rams, but at the same time, I
Yeah,
don't know.
never know.
You know, the Bucks are another pick in there. There's a lot of wild cards too. That can slip in and make it. Because like the Bengals, right? So could we have another Cincinnati Bengals story this year with another team? Who knows? So that's just something to look out for, and I'm really excited about for this season. It's going to be very fun and entertaining. So
There's also a lot of teams that have been
yeah.
good that I don't really know what to expect from, like the 49ers. Like I think they'll probably still be good, but maybe Trey Lance isn't what they thought he was going to be. You know what I mean? Like I think that there's a lot of that's a team that was in the NFC Championship game last year, and they are bringing in a lot of question marks into this season. The Seahawks have been pretty good for a decade plus. I don't think they're going to be any good at all. So they're just kind of out of sight, out of mind at this point. So I mean, every NFL season is like this, but there's a lot of teams you kind of look at and you're like, I don't know. I'm not really sure what they're going to. I mean, you look at what the Raiders did. The Raiders had a great offseason. The Chargers had a great offseason. Like, I feel like on paper, the Chargers have as good a chance as anybody to get to the AFC Championship game. But they're also the Chargers, and something horrible always happens. So, like,
Yeah.
there's so many teams that you look at them and you're like, yeah, you could talk me into that team being in the championship game in their conference. Which is fun. You like that. You like to have all this. It's one of the great things about the NFL is parity. You don't every year is going to bring a handful of different teams, like last year with the Bengals that you just did not count on being there, that end up being there at the end of the year.
Yeah, definitely. Much better than seeing the Patriots in the Super Bowl every single year. But so last question, man, for you today here on the podcast, Andy. What advice would you give others out there, including me, who are aspiring to get into world sports broadcasting, those who are interested in this career, wanting to get into this study?
I mean, I would say what you're doing right now is huge. Like doing your own thing. You've got the access to a platform that when I was, I don't know how old you are, but I assume when I was your age, this wasn't as readily available. So just kind of creating your own podcast and your own outlet is huge because you reached out to me on Twitter. We're doing this now. I'll retweet it and tell people about it. I don't know how many extra views that's going to get you. Maybe a couple, we'll see. But like then, now you and me know each other. So that's kind of like a little networking thing. That's really smart. I just think there's so many opportunities for young people that want to do this now, to do their own thing, that didn't exist before. There's really no excuse to not do it. That said, I still think it's really important while you're doing your own thing to kind of, pay attention to and respect what the traditional ladder kind of looked like. I think the pitfall that a lot of young folks fall into these days because of the access to stuff like this is, okay, I did this thing and I've been doing it for a couple of years and I feel like it's really good. Well, now I should be on ESPN. And it's like, well, pump the brakes. Like, it's good that you're doing your thing. And, hopefully that's eventually what it leads to, but there's still, you gotta cut your teeth and you still gotta sharpen up and get better at all the fundamentals and that kind of stuff. So like, I think that the upside is there's so much access to being able to gain this experience. The downside is I think it sort of accelerates the expectation sometimes of young people trying to get into sports media where they think something is going to happen faster than it probably will in terms of being on whatever it is, a major network or a radio station with partnerships with the team or whatever. There's still the basic things that you have to be able to do that you can only learn by doing and by being in the business and by interviewing people and by making mistakes and by observing other professionals and seeing how they go about it. That's really important too. Like it's never a bad idea to emulate other people before, not copy, but kind of, see what that person did. And all right, they've had success in this business for 30 years. There's a reason why.
Right.
What are they doing? How are they going about their business? So that's a really good way to do it too. I mean, I still think internships are valuable. I know they're not as readily available as they used to be, but just getting your foot in the door at an established media outlet can be helpful. And just being out there and putting yourself out there and trying to get as much experience as you can. The other thing that no one wants to hear, but is probably true, is you have to be ready to be poor for a while.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot of money in the first part. You're doing all the work and you're, getting better. You might be better than other people, but I don't know, you might be a part-timer, or you might be working for a low salary or something like that. A lot of people get out of sports media because of the money. There's not a lot in it at first. And that can be really frustrating. A lot of people that I started with are real estate agents now, or that are they're financial consultants or whatever. And they probably make a hell of a lot more money than me, but at some point, at a certain point, it does get frustrating to be like, it would be nice to not have 4 roommates or to live with my parents or whatever. But that is part of it. It just takes a minute to kind of work through the lower level of it before you get up there and you kind of start making a living. So patience is probably the right thing to say. It takes time, and I think a lot of things feel immediate now because of social media and access to platforms that didn't exist before, but it still takes a long time to get good, and just wanting to be good is the most important part, and sticking with it.
Yeah. And I appreciate that advice, man. Thank you for coming on, talking ball with us today and giving us that tidbit right there, which is very helpful. So to everybody out there watching who is like me, aspiring to get into this business, great advice there from Andy. Of course, patience is going to take time. Just keep doing what you're doing, keep working.
Get ready to be broke.
Yeah, and be ready to be broke. Yes. That's okay. Well, yeah, but thank you again, Andy, for coming on. And it was great talking with you, man. Good luck to you.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. No problem.